Dentistry in General Radio Network presents DIG's official podcast with Dr. Bob D.
Join us at Digapalooza this November in Chicago, brought to you by Dentistry in General. This exclusive event features world-renowned speakers, leaders in their fields, delivering carefully selected topics that tackle the real challenges dentists face today. Held in the private halls of Gibson Steakhouse, it's more than CE. It's a connection to a supportive dental community. Early bird pricing is live, but spots are limited and selling fast. Visit dentistryingeneral.com for more details.
In this episode,
so what are the things that you actually recommend dentists to look out for is that this is the time to get an attorney?
If there's long-term contracts, hard to get out of, sticky ones, real estate leases, real estate lease negotiations. It's good to have an attorney or a broker or both, because landlords can show you comps that may or may not be accurate, but it's good to have someone in the marketplace say, hey, this really isn't market. I think the biggest one are like partnerships and joint ventures. Everything can be great for 3 years, but when the parties haven't discussed really important things, now you have a problem, right? You gotta also think about the financial pressures on both of these individuals as units in 5 years, so that we can talk about that before we sign a document. That saves a lot of headaches because breaking up a partnership is really expensive.
How to protect your dental career. Legal insights on associate agreements, partnerships, and acquisitions. Dr. Bob D. interviews Justin Morgan.
Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Justin Morgan. Justin is an attorney that specializes in dental transactions. And I like to call it dental transactions because there are whole kinds of things that you can help people. I want to first kind of introduce yourself. Tell me, where we went to school and how did your career form into becoming involved with us crazy dentists?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bob. My name is Justin Morgan, as you mentioned. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. I was born in Ohio, was East Coast a little bit, moved to Reno and grew up there. I went to University of California, Santa Barbara for my undergraduate degree, graduated 2007. Then I went to SC for law school and graduated 2011.
SC, for those who are not from California, it's USC, okay.
Yeah, Southern California. Old school, I'd be specific for really getting there. And I started out my career in the recession, right? Which is crazy. And so I was working at the Ninth Circuit as an extern for a summer. And then I joined and I jumped into litigation because that was like the only thing that was going on. And I started out doing construction defect litigation, which is crazy because you learn how things are built, right? And so all of this kind of builds up into my current career, and I didn't plan it. If I did plan it, I would be brilliant. But I did construction defect for the first year and went to trial and had a couple different things going on, which is really cool. Got very broad litigation experience. And then I went to another firm called Brown Rudnick and got really high level commercial and bankruptcy litigation experience. Worked on a lot of different cases with deal volume sizes up to billions of dollars. And then just decided that I want to take my career in a different direction. And I come from a family of doctors. So my grandfather was a family practitioner. My dad's a neurosurgeon. My brother's a cardiologist. And I'd been consulting with them about business stuff, right? And I'd always been interested in business. And so as I was transitioning, I had an opportunity to work with Bank of America and learn this business in this very niche industry in dental. And I was looking for a pivot, looking to get into a biz dev role and just learn that. And ended up working with B of A for about 1.5 years, learned the business, learned a lot of players in Southern California, Northern California, and a lot of people from that organization matriculated throughout the country. So that ended up giving me somewhat of a nationwide network. And then I came into the practice of law as a general commercial transactional attorney. Also, I do dispute resolution and some of the financial analysis and really giving people an integrated opinion all in one conversation. I feel comfortable looking at a profit and loss. I'm happy to talk through risk matters and then actually handling the documents. And I will rely on and work with brokers and other financial professionals to backstop that, right? To make sure that we're doing everything right. But that's been my approach for the past 5 years. I own and run my own shop, and it's the Morgan Advisory Group. And we have, contracted, professionals in real estate and other areas of the law to backfill and support our clients throughout the United States, right? And that's kind of the integrated, holistic, long form pitch about the firm.
So I have always believed that when you're talking about IT, I don't like when people say, oh, it's a dental specific IT. There is no such thing. Data is data. You need to protect data. But when it comes to some other services, such as an attorney, I believe it actually can save you money to go to people who don't have to spend a lot of time understanding deals. So when I introduce you as a dental specific, and that you've done a lot of dental deals, tell me what does that look like? How did you come about to get experience in that?
As a segue, I have an MBA. I just finished the program. So I have been, doing that at 5:30 in the morning for the last 14 months. But I'm a JD MBA, which is really cool to say. The importance of having a dental specific attorney is that there's a few cadences, the network of people and the issues. They can be figured out by other people, but it's going to take some time, right? And you can basically short circuit or get to the same result or a better result faster. And I'll give you a good example. I was working on a transaction, and there was a gentleman that had all of the right qualifications, had done dental deals before at the high and the low end levels, and maybe done probably 10 right over his career. But some of the expectations that he had and the hard lines that he drew for his clients were relatively unusual in the marketplace and should have been softer positions. And that client would have won that deal and would have been able to ride off into the sunset with a fantastic practice. But the opportunity blew up and we ended up walking away from it. And what happened was that person spent, let's say, 10 grand to get to the LOI phase and then lost that 10 grand and all that time and the opportunity. And then my clients spent time getting to the LOI phase too and then lost the opportunity. So it's important, and this will also go between dental specific attorneys. They need to be able to get along. They need to be able to find consensus relatively quickly because time will kill deals. And so you want to have people that are active and engaged that can actually help get these things closed. And that does require a level of familiarity with the business space, the transaction players.
Okay. So if I were to put a menu up there and say, these are the things that Justin can do for a dentist, I want people to start thinking about, this is a litigious world these days, right? And you want to hire an attorney so you don't have to go to litigation, right? If everything is spelled out beforehand and everything is taken care of, there's no misunderstanding. So what are the things that you actually recommend dentists to look out for, is that this is the time to get an attorney to review this? Well, what are the services that you offer?
Okay, so generally speaking, anytime you're about to sign a contract, right? Unless that contract is worth less than $10,000, okay? If there's long-term contracts, hard to get out of, sticky ones, just call an attorney. It doesn't take all of that much time to do a high-level, very fast review, okay? Real estate leases, real estate lease negotiations. It's good to have an attorney or a broker or both, because landlords can seem really nice and they can show you comps that may or may not be accurate, but it's good to have someone in the marketplace say, hey, this really isn't market. And a good example was recently, and this was a tiny deal. It was a year-long lease, and they wanted a $5,000 security deposit on monthly rent of $850. And we just told the client, we're like, hey, look, this isn't really normal. And you're renting 200 square feet of space in an office building. Even if you took a hammer to it, the drywall's worth $300. Why do you need $5,000? And we asked that question, and then we ultimately broke the deal. And that wouldn't have killed her, but that would have taken $5,000 out of her pocket and put it in somebody else's account for 5 years. And so every time you're signing a contract, we have leases, lease renegotiations, right? You have practice acquisitions, even the equipment acquisitions. It can be really helpful to have an attorney because you can get a form online, right? You can get the really cheap attorneys that are like, hey, I'll charge you $1,000. I've got a pre-made lease and I'll put your name on it and we'll be great. But when there are actual issues that arise, that's when you lose a bunch of time and that person's going to charge you, or you're going to start to lose, there's going to be opportunity costs, and you're going to have to hire someone to fix those errors later on. And so it's good to walk through the process and be really sure of what you're doing. I think the last and most, the biggest one are partnerships and joint ventures and really starting to work with someone, because two attorneys, and again, you can find a standard form operating agreement offline, pay $0 for it, put your names on it, sign it, or don't even do that at all. And everything can be great for 3 years. But when the parties get at odds, and they haven't discussed really important things, now you have a problem, right? And so really important that, look, the documents are important, but the advice and the counsel that goes into the documents, that's really important. And so I was on the phone with someone today who was thinking about a partnership. They've got an acquisition and it's, hey, we love each other, we want to be partners. And I'm like, look, you got to also think about the financial pressures on both of these individuals as units in 5 years, right? At that point in time, this practice is making double what it's making, and this person's having a great time, and this person's having a terrible time. And you need to be understanding of what that means in the front end so that we can talk about that before we sign a document, right? And if both parties are more in tune and they respect the other party and understand, that's a better outcome, and that saves a lot of headaches because breaking up a partnership is really expensive.
It's amazing about stuff that can go on in a business relationship that you don't even think about. So to summarize, if you are making an acquisition, obviously there are contracts that you need to have it reviewed. If you're doing a real estate lease, those need to be reviewed. If you're doing a partnership, I would think that's a very difficult agreement to come up with, right? And then one thing that you said, the equipment leases, it's important as well.
I was talking about equipment sales. I may have misspoke. Those little nuances, even in the smaller deals, that should be just addressed. And there's a peace of mind with it. And we act as a security, like an insurance policy for deals. Right. And so we put our names and our licenses and our reputations on every single deal. So we have to take it pretty seriously. That's not opening the door for abuse with your attorney, but that's the commitment that you get with an attorney that takes it seriously.
And contract reviews, I know this is very high in demand these days. There are a lot of young dentists that are given these contracts to sign by DSOs, by even private practices. Do you do those as well?
Yeah. I usually do like a reduced cost to keep it down for the associates. And I'll give them a red line and just say, hey, go ahead and negotiate yourself. And that's not to be dismissive. This is your first crack at negotiations. Okay. And these are deal points that are important. And now that we bring up DSOs, those are really important contracts that need to be reviewed and discussed at length. And those are important deals, especially when the dollar values get higher and the method of payment gets more complicated.
Struggling with the pressures of private practice? Digapalooza is here to help. Hosted by Dentistry in General, the first weekend of November in Chicago, this unique event features all-star speakers, recognized globally for their expertise, delivering carefully selected topics designed to give you actionable takeaways for your practice. These aren't your typical lectures. Plus, sponsors are handpicked to support independent dentists against private equity-backed offices. The learning continues beyond the classroom with insights from thousands of practices. Don't miss out. Early bird discounts are available now, but spots are limited and going fast. Secure yours at dentistryingeneral.com.
I recently had, I'll tell 2 stories here. I had one, a doctor that was selling a practice north of $4.5 million, okay? And he was looking at paying $4,000 for the contract to be reviewed. Now, that's great, but what does that get you and how much runway? Because these are serious contracts with serious people that need to be negotiated. And that's a lot of exposure for a doctor to be playing with when you've got a minor breach of contract and you have a $1 billion company that's, hey, let's go beat up on this guy a little bit. And you get a demand letter and it's, hey, we want 500 of that back, right? And so you want a little bit more protection, and it takes time. It takes time to work through these things. To the other point, on the associate agreements, 98% of them are okay. But when you're dealing with aggressive, protective practices, which is okay, right? People get burned, and it's okay to put in very clear provisions like, hey, this is important to me. I need this, I need this, I need this. It's like a relationship. You set some boundaries, right? You want to actually understand what those are and what's market and what is acceptable. And then, look, you can agree to whatever, but just accept the consequences, right? And so, look, if you got to stay for a year, otherwise you get all of this stuff clawed back, stick around for a year, provide them with notice. But we want to make sure that we think about what's your exit plan. My first question is like, how long are you staying here? What is the purpose here? Because we got to think about, do you need to be able to work across town like in 3 years? Or do you need to be able to pick up some additional work without asking for permission?
Yeah. It's really important because I hear this advice online, and I've read it for many years, that, oh, it won't hold up in court. Yeah, but do you really want to hire an attorney to fight it? That's the key. Do the preventative work beforehand and say, I'm not happy with this clause. Maybe I should look for another job, so you don't create headaches for yourself. Do you agree with that philosophy?
I couldn't agree more. And I've seen a couple different facets of it. I've actually seen the more pernicious is when people take positions that aren't supported by the documents and withhold money. And they know it's not going to hold up in court. And so sometimes it's important to have conversations with professionals on the front end, because you're like, wait, the way that this person is moving and navigating this conversation may indicate that these people are going to treat you poorly if you don't do what they say. Right. And that's really important to know, right? Because then we have to make sure that we have really good out clauses that are clear. And you take defensive measures because they may not be as trustworthy as they appear. And let's take the value judgment away from that and just say that some people play defensively and some people play offensively. And some people are just like, hey, let's just be honest and straightforward with each other. And so you got to make sure that like you understand who you're dealing with on that other side.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a good thing that you say that. If they have a clause there that you know it doesn't hold up in court, that means they're trying to pull something anyways. That's your first red flag, right?
Yeah. Clear misunderstandings of the law are like major red flag, right? And just be warned that you're probably going to deal with some very weird, annoying issues on the back end because the relationship's probably not going to last.
And a lot of people, nothing against you, Justin, but they don't realize that not all attorneys are like the personal injury attorneys that work on contingency. When you decide to sue someone, Justin's going to bill you every 2 weeks. Justin?
Yeah, it's serious. Money. Yeah, because look, like litigating, okay, you wake up and you fight and you go to sleep and you fight in your dreams. So it's not cheap to pay someone to live that way, right? It's not, oh, my clients love me and they send me like chocolates at Christmas. No, it's my attorney sends me a bill and says, you got to pay, otherwise I'm not showing up. And you have to do that with some clients. So it's, hey man, this is a pretty serious thing. It costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of effort. And even with this idea of PI attorneys and ambulance chasers, like there's a lot of good attorneys that take their jobs really seriously. And they've devoted their lives in like very difficult lives to helping other people. Now, say what you will, like it's a tough job and like it's important.
No, I always say I love my attorneys because if it wasn't because of our attorneys, God knows what they would be feeding us in restaurants, right? In other words, it's protection for us. I love it. And I tell this, and I've given this advice to at least, 10, 15 young dentists that call me so upset and worked up at how they're being mistreated. DSO and private practice owners. We're not picking on DSOs. There are as many bad private practice owners as DSOs that they're like, oh, I want to go, they owe me this much money and I want to go sue them. And I'm like, first of all, take a deep breath. How much is it? How much do you want to spend? You have a smile child. Do you really want to get your life obsessed over this? Look at it as a very expensive CE course on not to do certain things.
Yeah.
And make sure you hire an attorney to prevent these things. These are all preventable things. One of the biggest questions that everyone has is like, oh my God, he's in Southern California. Can he help me? Elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah. So without violating rules and whatnot, I have a license to practice in California. I transact in other states. If I need to get local counsel, I'll handle that. But the vast majority of items, we can provide consultative services. We can talk about it. We can work through those issues. And then privately with my clients, we'll talk about how all of that representation and relationship works. It is very important when you have litigation. If you're going to court, you need local counsel. And that is not so much because the content and like the stuffing of the law is so different. Like in Kentucky, it's not like we treat a slip and fall differently. You slipped, you fell, you hit your head. But walking into Kentucky court versus LA court, there's going to be some differences. There's going to be differences in the filing, the approach, the decorum, how you deal with the clerks, like all of that is different. And so that needs to be understood very well by local counsel. And so you have state and federal, and you should also know between those different distinctions as well. And that's also something I will do ad hoc for my clients, which is, hey, like these are probably some good attorneys that you should speak to.
Okay. Yeah. And that's the purpose of this talk, is that consult an attorney so you don't have to go to litigation. That's the main thing.
Yeah. A lot of things can be resolved before litigation gets involved, because a lot of dentists a lot of humans don't want to just get involved with the litigation process. Some may posture as if they're a really tough person and they want to litigate, but you have to have a very big bankroll and a whole lot at stake. In $25,000, it's a lot of money at the beginning of a career. As we move and grow and do those things, like the value of that becomes a little bit less, especially when you take into account how much money you can make in private practice or as an associate working. It's, wait a minute, do I really want to blow up my life over this matter and this amount of money? And attorneys can be good about, hey, look, let's just settle this out and get this resolved so you can sleep at night.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. If you're buying a practice, let's say $1 million, 25,000 is what, 2.5% of the value? If you're not investing that in legal counsel and advice, it's not really, it's basically advice. I have someone who's seen hundreds of these contracts to tell me this is a red flag. Wouldn't you want that? It's amazing that's how many doctors don't do that. I want to ask you something is that, let's say it's not a secret, I'm anti-private equity in healthcare, but let's say if a doctor they want to sell to a DSO, can they also come to you and ask for your help to review the contract?
Yeah, and also the negotiations and the LOI and deciding between LOIs. I know that a lot of doctors get unsolicited bids, and they're unsolicited offers, they're not brokered. I think that it might be a mistake to accept one and just go with it, because no one's going to give you their best offer at first. It's just with an associate contract. It's, hey, let's talk about the pluses and minuses here. Let's talk about who the employer is, how much money you're going to make, when are you going to make it, what happens if it goes sour. And it's incredible because you have folks that have built these really incredible businesses that are local, they support the communities, all these things. And they're like, hey, I can handle these guys. But what you don't understand is that in every legal document, there might be 100 attorneys that have worked on that, maybe even thousands that have added to that and grown that little encyclopedia over time. And then there's also people that are actively competing against you. And how hard they're competing, you'll never know. And so it's, when you think about the contracts in that sense, you're like, wait a minute, what if there were 100 people looking across the desk being like, just watching you, be like, let's see if he signs it. This would be great. We'll all go to lunch after this. It kind of changes that dynamic.
Tell me about the group practices, that if someone has 2 or 3 offices, that you can help them structure it in a way that they can be protected, right?
Yeah, we think about the corporate structure, right? And we want to make sure that it has the flexibility and it integrates the needs of all of the partners. And so that if people come and go, if life circumstances change, 1, the practice stays strong, and 2, the departure is relatively stable, because a lot of what happens in these practices is based on goodwill. You have patient charts that inherently don't have any immediate value, right? It's whoever's behind that relationship with that patient. And you have all these other relationships with the humans that are associated with the practice. And once the parties get sideways, those relationships can deteriorate and everybody stands to lose. So we want to make sure that everybody's well advised on the front end. We're very clear about what we need and what we expect. And then my clients are also advised that, look, things change. So we need to be flexible and we need to have enough dexterity to deal with that when it comes up.
Great. Okay, thanks, Justin. Hopefully we can do more of these. I'd like to actually, for you to come and discuss a case, for example, of how things went well and what things you can do for dentists. And we can have this hopefully on a regular basis.
Absolutely, man.
Great.
That's a wrap, but your journey continues at DIGRN this November in Chicago. Presented by Dentistry in General, this event connects you with world-class speakers, sharing insights you won't find anywhere else, and delivering carefully selected topics to help you grow clinically and professionally. Early bird pricing is available, but spots are limited and selling quickly. Elevate your skills and expand your network. Visit dentistryingeneral.com to register now.
This has been a production of Dentistry in General Radio Network. Visit our website, dentistryingeneral.com, to join engaging clinical and business conversations, explore our dental podcasts, and stay updated on our upcoming live event.